podcast from the Green Room Studio. We are a go.
You were doing something with American Frontline Nurses, right? Could you talk to me a little bit about that, about the FDA reform that you were focusing on during that COVID time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in 2020, I was actively a banker at JP Morgan. I was working at the firm. I had stepped away from the hospital field and thought, let's conquer banking and see if this feels right for me. And what I had learned was I had seen a nurse's video go viral, and I will never forget the day I saw this video go viral. This nurse was she was an ICU trained flight nurse with 10 years experience. So immediately I'm already respecting her knowledge of what she's been through, flight nursing itself, let alone nursing school. She had a master's. So I was really studying her background. And she's like, people aren't dying of COVID. They're dying of the virus, or they're dying of the treatment. They're dying of the drug remdesivir. And I remember something quickened in my soul when I heard this video go viral. And I was like, this nurse is, from my own lived experience, nurses are not media trained. We do not know how to write a book. We don't know how to sit down and do interviews. Time management is not the strength. Like, they're crisis put out fires, go to the next one, crisis put out fires. And it just, like, her passion and drive. Her name is Nicole Sarotek, and she's the founder of America Frontline Nurses. And I, without question, was her right hand and became the FDA reform specialist for America Frontline Nurses. They actually appointed me the FDA reform specialist because I have a BS and a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And I already had 7 years advocating with Concerned Veterans for America on the policy side of VA reform, that we were able to reach more. And that looked like we would only focus on FDA reform, and every case that we came through, we would get their story, we would collect the data, the information of who they were, what hospital system they were at. We would host protests outside of different hospitals. We would empower the family with give, send, goes. We would give them all the information and just be like, you are empowered, go after the doctor's nurse, find out the nurse's license, her last name, the doctor's, their last name, what are you doing? And just like sharing this information in real time, and allowing people to have alternative medicines, getting some people ivermectin inside of the hospital, getting some patients off ventilators and back home, saving lives in real time. We did one of the cases, we were live streaming to Facebook at the time before everything started getting censored. And we called ambulance company, and we had the ambulance company give us a cash direct transfer price. So one hospital had an ECMO machine that we would need for the patient. The other hospital did not. So we called a private ambulance company, bartered the price down. People out in the ethers on Facebook were sending me, I was running their social media, and I was the press secretary at the time for America Frontline Nurses. They're sending me pictures of their credit cards, just average Americans watching it, just like docilely watching this, sending us pictures of their credit cards so we could get this patient transferred in real time. So I called them and I was like, this isn't even my credit card, but I have these credit card numbers. They took the credit card, they showed up, they transferred the patient, they got him on the ECMO machine, and we were able to give him the treatment that he needed, to give him the treatment that he had earned.
That's awesome.
That's just one of many stories that we were doing in real time. And there was an entire network, an underground network of nurses doing this. From LPNs to RNs to nurse practitioners to functional doctors and nurses all banding together.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you guys are really working against the grain there.
Yes. It was very challenging. It was tedious. It was challenging. It was like I stopped working at JP Morgan and took a private duty nursing gig just so I could work third shift, so I could communicate, because we were all across the United States. So then it just became like full-time organizing, finding lead RNs in each state to delegate the cases out in each state. And then we were running into barriers. One of the barriers was like wives weren't able to get to the hospital to see their husbands because the vaccine card status started coming into play. So as a combat veteran and as a constitutionalist and as someone who believes in the right of choice, hard stop, I was like, you can choose between a religious exemption or you can choose between a fake vaccine card. Those are my options that I can offer you if you're choosing not to become vaccinated. And so just like being able to have the nurse to have our underground networks already established prior to any solid mandates coming down was very helpful.
Oh wow, you guys were there just in time.
Yeah. It was trust. It was just like the movement grew so fast. It's beyond one person. It's beyond one policy. It's beyond nurses itself. It just is the medical freedom movement as it was making policy, which is now impacting FDA reform.
Okay. Well, I do want to ask you one thing about that though, because you said you were censored, right?
Yes,
like,
on social media.
Yeah. What were the reasons that you guys got censored for?
So there's self-censorship itself, which we're learning, like, I believe in a free and open society, freedom of speech is foundation.
It was like an internal thing?
No, so censorship would be through all of our platforms on Facebook, on Instagram, on Telegram, on, we were getting our nurses were getting doxxed using LinkedIn. They would go and find our information, whatever hospital nurses were at. They would report the nurses themselves. So then all of our nurses either were going completely autonomous or removing which hospitals they worked at on LinkedIn. Still being able to impact, because you have this is America, and to fully understand, like, challenging the status quo the whole time in real time.
Like what? What were you guys challenging?
We were challenging the drug ivermectin, and we were challenging with the drug remdesivir. So not supporting and advocating.
That was the stuff during COVID, right?
Correct. So we were using the hashtag nurses against remdesivir, run, death is near, because they would give this drug remdesivir, and remdesivir is a known failed Ebola drug that will put patients into all organ failure and kidney failure, and they would be dying of the drug, they would not be dying of the virus. So that was getting covered up, and that was getting...
That was because they wanted people to get the vaccine, right?
They needed to have dead bodies.
Or
so people...
Remdesivir was like what? Like if somebody had COVID, what they would get to help them make...
It would be mass as a treatment. It's a hospital treatment. It's a hospital protocol. You go on a ventilator, you get remdesivir, and then you're dead. But in all actuality, no dead bodies were coming out of people's homes that had COVID. The dead bodies were only coming out of hospitals. So we were even getting to a point where we were informing our patients that were reaching out to America Frontline Nurses. If you're scared and you're questioning what we're sharing, we encourage you to stay home no matter what, because the higher death rate is at hospitals, not at home.
Okay. But some people didn't like your messaging, right?
A lot of people didn't like our messaging. So we were getting doxxed specifically by the FDA Foundation, was coming after Nicole Saratak, and she has written a book called Dark Influencers that goes into depth and detail of the level of censorship and how it wasn't even character attacks. It was going after nurses' license, false complaints of nurses that were truly speaking truth to power. And this is, like, as I humbly say this, but this is our fight as nurses. Like, there's different avenues for different professions, and if you're not challenging it when it's needed, you may be in the wrong profession.
No, I agree. Yeah, that's what I said. Working against the grain. There's like a lot of status quo that you have to work against. That's. I mean, I think with time, they'll see with like studies and everything.
And history will show for sure, because history will repeat itself. This is why a lot of us nurses knew up front, is because this is the same playbook that Anthony Fauci did in the 70s. He used the drug AZT during the AIDS epidemic, and patients were dying of the drug AZT, not the actual virus. Just like right now, they're dying of the drug remdesivir. They're not dying of the actual virus. So nurses were able to, critical thinking nurses that were awake, or critical thinking nurses willing to see the patterns, were able to be like, oh, we've seen this before. I know I studied it, and I went to a Catholic university in Mount St. Joseph, and we studied AZT and the failed AZT drugs.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard about how that was such a big scare during the AIDS epidemic. So I mean.
So I had no problem holding a sign outside Bay Pine saying, "You can't fool us."
No, it's sad that so many people have died, right, from it, and I just think that it's good that you're able to speak on behalf of people who don't even know, right?
Right.
You can share that info.